Princess Charlotte was born on May 2, 2015, 18 years after Princess Diana died. She never saw her grandmother's face in person, never heard her voice, never felt her hug. And yet Diana's presence in Charlotte's life is stronger than anyone expected. Why? Because William and Kate made sure of it. From the moment Charlotte was born, they made a promise: Diana would never be forgotten. They gave her the middle name Diana as a tribute, a way of keeping her grandmother's memory alive in the most personal way possible. Her full name, Charlotte Elizabeth Diana, honors both the late Queen and the grandmother she would never meet. But a name is just a name. What matters is what's in the heart. And on Diana's 65th birthday, Charlotte showed the world exactly what was in hers. Royal insiders say Charlotte has always been curious about her grandmother. She asks questions. She looks at old photographs. She writes letters to Granny Diana on special occasions. Royal expert Phil Dampier has noted that Kate makes a point of keeping Diana present for her children, especially around anniversaries tied to her birthday or death. But nothing prepared the public for what happened on July 1, 2026, Diana's 65th birthday. A moment so raw, so real, it left Britain in tears. Not a scripted tribute. Not a carefully worded statement from the palace. Something far more spontaneous, and far more human. William's choice of name was never just sentimental. Before Diana died, he reportedly promised her that one day, as king, he would see her Her Royal Highness title restored. Diana's close friend Simone Simmons has suggested that naming Charlotte after her grandmother was William's own quiet way of fulfilling that promise, ensuring his mother's memory would endure. Naming a child after someone isn't the same as knowing them, of course. Charlotte will never sit on her grandmother's lap or hear her laugh. But Diana's influence is woven into her life anyway. Through the stories her parents tell, the photographs on display in their homes, the quiet moments when William shares memories of his mother. Royal commentator Richard Kay has explained why Diana became a middle name rather than a first. Giving a child their famous grandmother's name outright would invite constant comparison, something William wanted to spare his daughter. Making Diana the first name, Kay has suggested, would have placed an unfair weight on a young girl who never asked for the spotlight. So it became a tribute rather than a burden, and it worked. Charlotte has grown up understanding Diana not as a distant historical figure, but as a real person, a grandmother, a mother, a woman who changed the world, someone whose photographs and stories feel as familiar to her as any living relatives. When Charlotte was born, the world waited to hear what she'd be named, and when Charlotte Elizabeth Diana was announced, people understood it wasn't just a name, it was a promise that Diana's spirit would live on through the next generation. Charlotte's understanding of her grandmother has been carefully nurtured. Dampier's observation bears repeating. Kate ensures her children think of Diana especially on meaningful anniversaries. Kate's own parents, Carol and Michael Middleton, also tell the children stories about Diana's life and her humanitarian work. There's something even more personal, too. William and Kate have taken their children to Diana's grave at Althorpe House, the Spencer family estate where she is buried on a secluded island. It's an emotional pilgrimage, standing at the resting place of a grandmother they never met, and connecting with her all the same. Charlotte has found her own ways to honor Diana, writing letters to Granny Diana, asking her father what Diana was like, what made her laugh, what made her happy. William has spoken about how important it is to keep his mother's memory alive for his children, not as a princess or historical figure, but as a person, with all her compassion and warmth. On Diana's 65th birthday, Charlotte proved she'd absorbed those lessons. The People's Princess may have died in 1997, but in Charlotte, her legacy is very much alive. Here's the twist: Charlotte's tribute wasn't a speech or a public appearance. It was something far more intimate, something that caught the entire nation off guard and left Britain unable to stop crying. Let me set the scene. Catherine, the Princess of Wales, had just completed the National Three Peaks Challenge, climbing the highest peaks in Scotland, England, and Wales within 24 hours. Ben Nevis, Scafell Pike, Y.R. Widfer, Snowdon. Over 10,000 feet of climbing, 23 miles of grueling terrain, all to raise money for the Royal Marston Cancer Charity, the hospital that treated her cancer. The challenge was physically and emotionally draining, but Catherine described it as more than a physical feat, a chance to explore life after diagnosis and give something back, with an emphasis on treating the whole person rather than just the disease. For a woman who had spent much of the previous 2 years in and out of treatment, the climb was as much a statement of recovery as it was a fundraising effort, proof, in the most literal sense, that she could push her body to its limits again. When she finally finished, her family was there to greet her: William, George, Louis, and Charlotte. But it was Charlotte's reaction that stole the show. One photograph showed her hugging her mother tightly, as if she never wanted to let go. Another showed her overcome with emotion, tears streaming down her face, a raw, unfiltered moment from a little girl who had been terrified for her mother's health. Catherine had been diagnosed with cancer in 2024. She underwent treatment and fought for her life, and her children watched it all happen. They saw her weak. They saw her afraid. They were terrified of losing her. So when Charlotte hugged her mother so tightly, crying with relief, it wasn't only about the Three Peaks Challenge. It was about the fear that Catherine might not have been there at all, and about the memory of a grandmother she never met, and her own determination to keep her mother safe. Fans across the world were moved to tears online, with many describing themselves as sobbing at the photos and calling them impossible to scroll past without emotion. People across Britain were crying, not because of a royal speech or a grand gesture, but because a little girl showed the world what love looks like. Here's the deeper twist. Charlotte's tears weren't only about her mother. They connect directly to Diana. William lost his mother when he was 15. Harry was 12. Both know what it's like to have a mother taken away too soon, and both have made it their mission to protect their own children from that same pain. A royal insider close to the family suggested the children must have been deeply worried for Catherine, and that seeing her healthy again would have brought them enormous relief. That's exactly what the hug meant: relief, joy, gratitude, and a silent promise never to take a mother's love for granted. There's more to the story. Charlotte has quietly honored Diana in other ways too. At her mother's Christmas carol service, she wore a deep blue velvet dress with a white lace collar, a style that echoed a dress Diana wore at Trooping the Colour in 1984. Royal experts called it a deliberate and touching choice, guided by Catherine. One palace insider described it as Charlotte quietly embracing her grandmother's legacy through her own sense of style. So the tears on Diana's 65th birthday weren't only about Catherine's health. They were also about a little girl honoring her grandmother, even though she never met her, even though she was born 18 years after Diana died, even though she knows her only through photographs and stories. Charlotte was crying for both her mother and her grandmother, and in that moment the two women were connected through love, loss, and a legacy of compassion that refuses to die. It's the kind of moment that makes you believe Diana is still watching over her family. Had she lived, Diana would be turning 65 this year. She would have seen her sons grow up, met her grandchildren, watched them become who they are today, and she would have been proud. Diana's legacy isn't only in the past. It's alive in the way William and Kate raise their children, in the compassion and kindness they model, in the commitment to making the world a little better. Diana was known for her warmth. She hugged people, crouched down to speak with children at their level, broke down the usual barriers of royal formality that had defined generations before her. Observers have noted the same instincts in Kate: affectionate, hands-on, determined that her children feel loved and secure, never afraid of a public embrace or a quiet word of comfort in front of the cameras. Charlotte seems to be a blend of both women: Diana's willingness to be vulnerable and show emotion, and Kate's steady warmth, both showing through in the smallest gestures. Dampier's point holds true here again. Kate deliberately keeps Diana part of the children's world on the anniversaries that matter most. And it shows. Charlotte talks about her grandmother, writes to her, thinks about her. But Charlotte's tribute on Diana's 65th birthday was never only about remembering. It was about carrying the legacy forward. Diana was known for her compassion, her ability to connect with people from every walk of life, and her willingness to show emotion in a world that often told her to hide it. Charlotte did exactly that. She cried. She hugged her mother. She showed the world what love looks like, without a thought for the cameras. That, more than any statue or plaque, is likely what Diana would have wanted: a granddaughter who embodies her spirit, unafraid to be vulnerable, who understands that love matters most. Diana was known for wanting her sons raised with a strong sense of right and wrong, and with compassion for others, values she clearly hoped would carry forward. Charlotte's tears on July 1st, 2026, weren't just a moment. They were a legacy in motion. Charlotte isn't the only one honoring Diana. Her brothers, George and Louis, have found their own ways to connect with the grandmother they never met. On Mother's Day in 2021, the world was moved by handwritten cards the children made for Granny Diana, each filled with simple, loving lines about missing and thinking of her, childlike handwriting, carefully signed, sent with the kind of unguarded affection that only children manage. It was a small window into a private family ritual most people never got to see, and it said more about how Diana is remembered in that household than any official statement ever could. These cards are more than sweet gestures. They're evidence of a family determined to keep Diana's memory alive, making sure their children know her as a mother and humanitarian, not just a princess from the history books. And it's working. George, Charlotte, and Louis speak of Diana as a real person they love, even though they never had the chance to meet her. There's another layer here too. William, who was only 15 when his mother died, has spoken about the pain of grieving in public. He has made clear he wants his children to have something he didn't, an ongoing relationship with their grandmother's memory, even in her absence. The Spencer family has played its part as well. Diana's brother, Earl Charles Spencer, has welcomed William and Kate's children to Althorpe House, Diana's final resting place. A kind of pilgrimage that lets the next generation connect with the grandmother they never knew, walking the same grounds their father once walked as a grieving teenager. On Diana's 65th birthday, Harry made a similar pilgrimage of his own, visiting Althorpe with Meghan and their children, Archie and Lilibet, to honor Diana privately at her grave, away from press and public attention. Diana's grandchildren, on both sides of a family that has often been divided in public, were quietly thinking of her that day, a rare moment of shared purpose across the family. If Diana could see Charlotte today, what would she think? Likely something like amazement, an 11-year-old girl carrying her name, her spirit, and her compassion. A girl unafraid to cry, who loves her mother fiercely, who embodies so much of what Diana stood for. Simone Simmons has said she believes Diana would be overjoyed to see it, calling it William's way of making sure his mother's memory endures. And it has endured. Every time Charlotte smiles, hugs her mother, or shows kindness to someone else, something of Diana's spirit is there. Diana was the people's princess because she was real. She showed emotion, cried, laughed, hugged, and refused to hide behind royal protocol. Charlotte, on July 1st, showed the world she has inherited exactly that spirit. She cried openly. She held her mother tightly. She didn't think about cameras, protocol, or appearances. She simply loved. That, more than perfection or restraint, is what Diana would likely have wanted. Not a princess who never shows feeling, but a person who loves deeply and isn't afraid to show it. Diana was famous for encouraging quiet, unrewarded acts of kindness, a legacy Charlotte seems to be carrying forward in her own way. On Diana's 65th birthday, the world remembered the people's princess. But Charlotte reminded everyone that Diana's legacy isn't confined to the past. It's alive, right now, in the next generation. It was supposed to be a quiet commemoration, a moment to remember a woman who changed the monarchy forever. Instead, Princess Charlotte turned it into something more, simply by crying, hugging her mother, and showing the world what love looks like, and in doing so, reminding everyone why Diana was so beloved in the first place. Because Diana wasn't just a princess. She was a mother, a humanitarian, a woman who showed the world that kindness matters. And Charlotte, the granddaughter who never met her, has inherited that spirit in her tears, in her hugs, in the way she loves her family. The photographs from that day capture something extraordinary. Catherine, exhausted but triumphant, surrounded by her family. William, visibly proud and emotional. George and Louis beaming. And Charlotte, holding onto her mother as if she might disappear. Fans described the images as almost too emotional to look at, saying they left people in tears across social media. Why did these photos affect so many people so deeply? Because they were real, not staged, not rehearsed, just a family sharing a moment of pure emotion. And in that moment, Diana was there too. Not physically, but spiritually, her legacy alive in Charlotte's tears, her compassion alive in Charlotte's hug, her love alive in Charlotte's heart. Britain was left in tears because the moment was so human, so relatable, so real. It wasn't royal protocol. It was simply a little girl honoring her grandmother in the most powerful way possible, not with words or speeches, but with love. And that is exactly what Diana would have wanted. The People's Princess may have left this world in 1997, but she never truly left. She lives on in the hearts of her grandchildren, in the letters they write her, the dresses that echo hers, the grave they visit at Althorpe, and the tears a granddaughter cried for a mother she almost lost. On her 65th birthday, the world remembered Diana, but Charlotte reminded everyone that her legacy is not just history. It's here, right now, in the next generation, growing up under a name that was chosen with love and a spirit that seems to have been passed down all the same. And that's a birthday Britain will never forget.